episode 5, The Asylum. And it's your boy Icon with some Marvel TV. And this is the second to last episode before Moon Knight is completed. So in our last episode, it picks up where the hippo, Stephen had got shot, Stephen and Mark got shot. And when they woke up in an asylum in the nut house, and then they tried to escape the nut house, and then when they escaped the nut house, they ran into this hippo. Now, the hippo basically said that she was the Egyptian goddess that's supposed to carry them back to the afterlife. And she's supposed to prepare them, for the afterlife. So she was like, get on my boat. And when we get on my boat, she's like, I'm going to take you through the sands of time and everything. And then she said that I'm going to put your heart on the scale. And then I'm going to try to balance your heart with the scale. And then once the scales balance, it'll decide whether or not you're allowed to go upstairs or downstairs. But she said that if the scales don't balance and you guys prove to not be worthy, then you'll get tossed over the boat and you end up in the sands trapped for all time. So this is complicated now because they're basically a split personality. And when the hippo tried to balance the scales for both of them, she noticed that there was a problem and the scales actually weren't balancing at all. So what she said, since you're schizophrenic and you have two different personalities, she said you need to find a way to balance each other's memories, each other's scales, in order for the scales to be fully balanced, because she said that if the scales don't balance, then I can't help you and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So this takes us on a journey now, a little backstory between both characters. But it was more about Mark's backstory than Steven's backstory. And then we find out why later. We find out that when Mark was a child, he had a little brother, obviously he had parents. His little brother, I guess he was cool with his little brother, but the two of them ended up going hunting and safari hunting. And, Mark as a kid, he was a fan of some British, like Crocodile Dundee, Indiana Jones type person. And him and his brother went searching through a cave because he liked doing all that types of stuff. His mother was very protective of the younger, of the younger son. And she told Mark, she was like, make sure you take care of your brother and blah, blah, blah. So what happens is Mark convinces his younger brother, to go into a cave with him. The two of them get into an accident in the cave. They fall down into some well or something, and then the little brother drowned. The mom at the funeral, basically something broke inside of her, and she blamed Mark for the reason why her baby boy, his brother, had passed away. She was very, very dismissive towards Mark. She flat out said to his face, she was like, oh, you never liked your little brother anyway, and you did it on purpose, and you wanted to kill him, and blah, blah, blah. Now, the whole time, Steven is watching these memories, and Mark is trying to get him to not look at them. He was like, don't look at the memories. And he was like, is that all mother? And then he was like, yeah, I didn't know we had a brother. And then he was like, is that daddy and everything? And then, Steven is just like, don't look at it, don't look at it, don't look. So Mark, Steven, he's going through the house looking at different memories. In the next memory after the funeral, it was Mark's birthday. And then when it was Mark's birthday, the mom didn't come out to say happy birthday to him. It was just Mark and his dad. And then his dad was just like, hey, listen, your mom's just going through something right now. It'll be okay. Then we saw another birthday where he was older now. The mom, she eventually did come out for his birthday. And then she berated him because she was just like, oh, you killed your brother and I'll never forgive you. And then there was another memory where he ran from the mom and ran into the bedroom. And then when he ran into the bedroom, Steven tried to go in the bedroom to see that memory, but Mark wouldn't let him go into the bedroom. Then it takes us to a memory where when Mark was older, I guess in his 20s, between 18 and early 20s, he left home to go join the army. And his dad tried to stop him. He was like, oh, I already lost one son. I can't lose two. But he was just like, listen, mom will never change. Mom hates me. And he was like, it was your job, dad. You were the one that was supposed to fix everything. You were supposed to fix his family. But instead you just allowed her, saying to go on berating me, and you never really did anything about it. So he kind of resented his dad too in that sense, and then he took off for the military. So then it takes us now back to the boat. And now we're back on the boat, and the hippo was basically telling them, she's like, listen, the scales never balanced. I don't know where you guys are going to be sent. And if that's the case, then the undead in the sands of time are going to come up and attack us soon. So y'all better figure this ish out. And then then there was a weird thing that happened where whenever we were with the hippo and we were going through the memories and we were being taken to the afterlife, they kept switching back and forth between the afterlife travels and a therapy session with Ethan Hawke's character. And I'm trying to figure out if Ethan Hawke's character is implanted, did he put, because he has magic or whatever the hell the case is. I'm wondering if Ethan Hawke's character put himself into Mark and Steven's conscious, and he's in there trying to fish out and dig information, or are they just dreaming him up because in the because the hippo did say when you're in the when you're in the waiting room of the afterlife, your conscious will create things that you're familiar with in order to make sense of everything. But then why would they think of Ethan Hawke? It's like, why, that could have been anybody. Why would the girl not be there? Why would Layla not be there? Said it's Ethan Hawke. So I kind of wonder if, like, whether or not he's in there. But he's going back and forth with them, talking. He's talking to Mark, trying to get Mark to open up to Stephen more, open up to Stephen more. So then after that, then they ended up having another flashback where they ended up back into the, into the therapy session. And when they went back into the therapy session, because up until that point, Mark was the one having conversation with Ethan Hawke. When we left the boat and went back into the therapy session, it was Steven that was actually talking to, to Ethan Hawke's character. And then that's when Ethan Hawke told him that, your mom isn't alive. And then he was like, what do you mean? He was like, I speak to my mother every day. And then he was just like, nah, then he gave him the phone to call his mom and nobody was on the other line. So it then takes us back to a final memory, the one memory that Mark was trying to keep from Steven, where Mark had ran into his room, running from his mother. And then his mother was like banging on the door, trying to get in. And then we see the moment where the personality disorder actually kicked in, where Steven was looking at the Indiana Jones poster or whatever, and the guy's name was like Stephen Grant or whatever. Like he was like, he was the British Indiana Jones. And that's when like his schizophrenia, his dual personality like kicked in for the very first time. And because of the mental trauma that he went through with how he was being treated by his mother, and because he was afraid, of his mom's wrath, and because he was trying to protect himself from that, his mental trauma kicked in, which caused him to create this alter personality called Stephen Grant. And that's when he started speaking with a British accent. And that was the day that Stephen was born. This was not only surprising to Stephen, but it was surprising to me as well, because the way the show was built up until this point, they make you think that Stephen is the original and Mark is like the schizophrenic like creation. Come to find out it's the actual reverse. Mark is the original and Steven was created to protect Mark's, like violent past. They even show a scene where Mark was, he was actually in the military and he had murdered all those people. I'm pretty sure Layla's dad was in that group as well, when he murdered all those people and then he couldn't take it anymore and he went into a pyramid. And that's when like what was it, like Khonshu, his statue was there. Mark was going to shoot himself, and then that's when Khonshu was like, oh, such wasted potential. And then he was just like, oh, I don't want to live. And then Khonshu was just like, oh, but instead he was like, why don't you join me and you can be my instrument for vengeance and you can be my Moon Knight. And then, Mark was like, yeah. And then that was the moment where he became Moon Knight for the first time and he took over, and Khonshu took him over and then he turned him into his instrument of destruction. But when we were in the bedroom and we saw Mark as a child create the Steven persona in that moment, that was when we realized that Mark again was actually the primary and Steven was the creation. And when Steven found that out, he kind of freaked out because he was like, I always thought I was the original. And he was just like, I was just something you came up with to mask your pain. And then, Mark was just like, oh, he was like, I created you so you wouldn't have to see the death and you wouldn't have to see like the horror that our mother put us through and blah, blah, blah. And then he was trying to protect him. And like I said, like they're arguing. And then now we're back on the boat. So now that we're back on the boat, the instruments of death are now coming out of the sands to try to kill both of them, I guess, because their scales never balance. So then after that, like, Mark was fighting off, like the zombies or whatever. And then Steven came in, he fought off the zombies. The hippo disappeared and I have no idea where the hippo went. But while they were fighting the zombies, there was a moment where one of the zombies had grabbed hold of Mark. And then when the zombie had grabbed hold of Mark, Steven went to save him. And then Steven fell off the boat. When Steven fell off the boat, he hit the sand. He started turning into like sandstone because like the hippo said, she's like, if your scales don't balance, you get tossed off the boat and then you get trapped in the sand for all time. So Steven was actually turning into stone. He got trapped into like this stone sand wall. And then when that happened, then Mark freaked out. And then I guess Mark had a chance to actually go to heaven, and he turned it down because he was trying to save Steven. He wanted to save Steven. And I guess that was enough for the scales to balance, because then when the scales finally balanced, the hippo was like, oh, the scales have balanced. I don't know what that means. And then after that, like this big white light came, and then Mark ended up in like this like garden full of flowers, which I guess we can perceive as him being in heaven. But unfortunately, Steven wasn't in that flower field with him. So I don't know if, but first of all, Steven's not even really real. Steven's not real at this point. So I don't know if we're done with Steven or not, but the Steven persona is not real. So I'm like, what did Mark really lose? He just lost like a piece of like crazy consciousness. He didn't lose an actual person. And I guess at this point, Mark's gonna now find some way to reconnect with Kanju because there's still something going on. Like Ethan Hawke is still out in the real world trying to kill everybody, and Layla's still out there trying to take him down solo. So I guess he's gonna like. There's one episode left, so I don't know what's gonna happen here. Where like how does because if he's in the afterlife, like how is Kanju gonna pull him out of the afterlife, and is he even there? Like we don't know. So many questions. But we we will see how everything concludes because they got 40 minutes to wrap this up in one more episode, and we'll see where all this takes us. You know, there was also even moments where we saw the funeral of his mom because there was a moment where like the mom had passed away, and then Mark showed up at the funeral, but he didn't go inside, and then he decided he didn't want any part of the funeral, so he started walking away. And then when he started walking away, then like his schizophrenia kicked in, and then he turned into Steven, and then Steven was just like, oh, he was like, how did I end up in the middle of nowhere? And then he called his mommy, and then he didn't even realize he was right in front of his mother's funeral. But that Mark told him, he said that was the day I guess he was aware of Steven and Mark. He said that was the day that both of our lives started to like blend together. So that was pretty interesting. But I mean, if we're done with Steven, then we're done with Steven. It's like it really wasn't a big deal. But I mean, I don't know. I guess he'll come back because they made it seem like he was the primary and he was the important person. We're not going to be done with Steven. But one more episode to go till we get all the answers because there is a lot of interest in this episode based on the backstory. But now I have more questions and I'm more confused as ever. And thank you for tuning in. So share your questions, comments, and concerns down below. What do you think about the episode so far? Do you like the backstory? Do you like the fact that Mark was the primary and Steven was the creation? I said share your comments and we will continue to talk about it. Check me out on Twitter and Instagram, always on YouTube, so we can share our comments, questions, concerns about all things superhero related. For the DC fans, I got Superman and Lois on the channel. I got Naomi on the channel, I got The Flash on the channel, and I still got that Young Justice, and we got one more episode to go as we put an end to the Moon Knight. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, keep your conscience in check, and until the season finale, take care. About this bitch!